I'm late because I was just talking to Matt Guild in the hall and I was giving him a hard time. And I said, this is the difference between, this is what our team does every single week. Brilliant engineers make really, really cool stuff. And Jeffrey used to give me a hard time. He's like, you PMs have it so easy. Like you would come along with something like this and get customer feedback and you would glue two of these things together and say, well, now you can flip a coin and make decisions because you're white on one side. That's the difference between PM and engineering. And Matt goes, I made one side scratchy and that's the difference. And I'm like, the story only illustrates the PM role even better. The customer said the scratchy is not good enough. I need to be able to see it more. You get the idea. That's my joke to start this session off. Happy Thursday. So this story starts with a real world feedback example, and that's what made me kick it off with the joke. Last summer, so not a year ago quite, there was, I don't remember if it was in Medium or what it was, but there was a blog post somewhere, and it was talking about how galleries are at risk of typo squatting. And so what typo squatting is the idea that someone could publish something that's only like one character off. And then people who are using that gallery might accidentally, through wildcards, through literally a typo, might accidentally install the wrong thing. And that would be like really a security problem depending on where that module is going. And so we really took that to heart. We took it as a security incident, as if it was a code incident, and decided we got to do something about this. And of course, he used the PowerShell gallery in his blog post as the example, which also didn't feel great. So that's the gist of this talk, is what are we trying to do about it, and how we think that the answer we've come up with actually introduces a whole bunch of stuff that as PMs we like to say we got for free, which is a way of saying we're just borrowing engineers from other teams that have already done cool stuff and rebranding it into a solution that we can call our own. So if you want to go to just the first, that's the first bullet point of the feedback slide. The second one, there we go. We've been getting feedback for as long as the gallery has existed, honestly. Isn't there any way that we can just have that thing, but in our own data center? And the answer has always been like, absolutely. You just go figure out how to install a NuGet server, which can't even be done using DSC because you have to build the NuGet instance. And it's actually kind of a Visual Studio 2019 project. And then they just look at me like I'm saying that. And then that's the end of that conversation. The last is the move to the container registry thing happened because about 5 years ago, we reached out to people who were working on this space, but it wasn't real yet. And we said, hey, for DSC, like this world is moving towards things like GitOps, where you could literally just put the configuration of a server in source control, and whatever is in main branch, the servers just pick that up and use it, right? So like a release to prod just means merge to main. That's really cool. And they said, how many servers are you talking? Oh yeah, like millions. How often are they gonna check in? Every 15 minutes. And they're like, yeah, your source control environment's not gonna like that. Good point. I said, you know, we're working on this thing for artifact management and it'll get replicated across regions and it'll use Entra for authentication and blah, blah, blah. We're like, yeah, okay, we get it. We'll solve this different problem to solve, got it. So that's kind of what brought us here. Probably within the next year of that conversation, if you wanna go to our next slide, this became an emerging community standard. So the idea, and you can just go to oras.land and read all about it. So we're not gonna spend too much time on this. Sydney is gonna demonstrate using their tool set. But the idea was, NuGet works great, but containers are evolving and have a very different set of requirements. For containers, there's been this need to do things like, well, what if I could take my automation scripts or any other types of things and also put that in my container registries? And I think they might have concluded that based on supporting their container infrastructure. But you know, this kind of surfaced as actually you can put anything you want into a container registry. You just have to stop and rethink how you're doing artifacts a little bit. So we read all about this. It's a Cloud Native Foundation project, which is a group that's near and dear to our organization, and really like where this is headed. So the pieces that I'm going to introduce, and then because I'm sure that you actually want to see demos and not just slides. So we're just sort of laying the foundation. But the things that we're going to walk through, so there is a thing called Azure Container Registry. Amazon has the same concept. Google has the same concept. VMware has the same concept. So this is an emerging popular thing. We will highlight the way it works in Azure, but there's more than just the Azure version of these things, and that's basically a hosted instance of a container registry in your subscription. There's literally a Docker container called registry, so you also can host a registry anywhere you want. Go ahead, yeah. We then figured out that the Microsoft Container Registry, which is the public place for the Microsoft containers, anonymous access, just like a PowerShell gallery, just pull stuff down, right? Was getting renamed Microsoft Artifact Registry. Like, sweet, we guessed right. So the idea was, oh, well, that means we should start putting the Azure PowerShell module into the place where Microsoft releases containers, which is going to make sense to no one until we try to explain this. But the idea is, well, only Microsoft can publish there. Zero chance of typo squatting. Like, you might accidentally install the wrong Microsoft module, but they're all going to be signed and supported, the things that live there. So that becomes this really enhanced thing, which is my last slide. We think may be the right answer, and this is why we're doing a talk. We want to get as much feedback as we can, so we're just going to explain the theory, walk you through what works and doesn't work today, and then get as much feedback as we can. We think this is a three-tier strategy. So we think the idea is you have a place that only, and I'm going to say Microsoft, but I really mean your software vendors, can publish to, right? And anybody can have one of these things, and it becomes just in this case, the Microsoft Artifact Registry, and only that vendor can publish there. They're signing it using their key, yada yada yada. Then you have the concept of a private registry, and private registries support caching, which means you can link these things up, and you can say, I want to have stuff that my organization manages, and I also want to have stuff that is coming from my vendors, and I want to have them just end up in the same place. And then you have what we're probably not going to show today other than talking about it and showing you where it lands when it does get provisioned, the concept of an Azure connected registry, which is an on-prem cache. So that is literally a container. Right now, I think their docs only explain Kubernetes. So I brought up to their engineering manager, like, it'd be really cool if I could just run that on Windows Server. And they're like, well, it's just a Docker container. I'll explain a little bit as we go as to what the challenges are in doing that today. But you get the idea, because now you've got fully signed, supported stuff my organization is working on and connected. Alongside that, we will keep the community gallery, right? Because that's where the community publishes and shares. But this way in the enterprise, you can distinguish these things. And then Sydney has done a great job, first of all, learning about group policy, because her first question was, why is it a group policy and why does it work this way, right? And then publishing an ADMX and an ADML so that now for PSResourceGet, you can actually manage using group policy, which also means you can import it into Intune, which also means at some point we hope you'll be able to do that for servers through Azure policy. Say, across my enterprise, I'm going to enforce, based on different use cases, where people can source their PowerShell modules. So if you want to say my servers can only get these modules from these, not these modules, but modules from these locations that I trust, you can build a supply chain security strategy around that. There's lots more to unfold in a true supply chain security, so we have to iterate and take our time and invest wisely. And so this is the first step in our prioritization journey. I think I have one more slide, and it just says, take it away, Sydney.
Sounds good. I guess at this point, any questions before we just play around with things the rest of the time? Everything's making sense so far? Okay, cool. One thing I'll just mention, since this popped up on my screen as the first thing, is Michael talked about ORAS today. And one thing I just want to call out is that ORAS can be used with all of the scenarios we're going to talk about today, directly using the ORAS CLI. PSResourceGet today does not use ORAS under the hood. It uses this open container distribution spec, which is similar but slightly different. The reason for that is because ORAS didn't have a .NET library. They're working on one, And so we are planning to adopt ORAS in the future once that library is available. But if you notice, there's like some slight differences between PSResourceGet and ORAS, and you want to like really dig into it, that's why. Alrighty. Cool. So I thought I'd start by showing you an example of an ACR instance, and then I'll show you how to build it and populate it. So this is my PowerShell Summit ACR instance in the portal. And then the place where you're going to find your modules is in repositories. And then you can see that these are actually not container images, they're PowerShell modules. So we abstracted the idea of an OCI artifact and created PowerShell module. And when you install the PowerShell module, it's going to be the exact same as if you installed it from anywhere else. So,
and one of the things you'll notice, this JSON, so this is super cool. When you get a NuGet file, all that metadata is inside the NuGet file. You download it, and then you look at the metadata file. In a container registry, all that JSON information is a layer of what you publish. So if you look at the metadata field, it's the PSD1 contents, which means you could actually, like one of our big problems in the DSC stuff has been, well, how do I know what resource I'm going to get until after I go install the module? Because I search by module name, but you're telling me I need to search by, computer local admin, not my computer. You get the idea, right? So in theory, in the future, we will do more than just tags. You'll be able to actually search by the type of information that in the past was sort of buried away. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Also, it is still just the NuGet file, right? It's like if you look at it, I think the package didn't change. So the extraction is still the same. It's just the metadata and the protocols that all changed.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Okay. So then let's show how to set this up. Okay. So I created a bicep file to provision my container registry. You can use PowerShell to do this. You can use the portal to do this. You can do whatever your favorite flavor of provisioning an artifact is, but you're going to want to create a container registry. So pretty straightforward at this point. If I want to provision this, not getting my, oh, I know what's happening. Sorry, I could type things out. I'm just like really don't want to. So I'm going to open a new PowerShell terminal so I can just use my completions. And do I have something different going on here? Oh, I'm not in the right folder. Thank you. Okay, I do need that. What going on? Cool. Okay, successful. We now have our ACR instance. And you can see here, this is one of the outputs. This is going to be the URI that you're going to use to register your repository. So I'm going to use...
I feel like my head is overlapping with this.
Oh, yeah, you're good. We're going to use register PS resource repository. Name is just a friendly name. It can be anything. My URI is, again, it's coming from that output value. I'll show you also how you can discover it. In the UI, it's just the login server here. That's all the information you need to provide at this time. Under the hood, this is using the Azure Identity SDK. So you can use any of the login methods that you would be using with, say, like Azure PowerShell. So I'm obviously already authenticated into my Azure instance because my last, deployment was successful. But if not, if you hadn't done that, say you had created this in the portal or another way, at this point before you would run this, or it'll prompt you interactively, you'd want to connect to your AZ account. So you don't need to provide any of the credential information. Another thing you could do is mark it as trusted. If you feel like, hey, this is my private repository, I feel good about this, I don't want to be prompted every time I install from there. And then we also have a notion of priority. If you want this to be, for example, the first repository that's always searched. There's also a force commandlet on this. This is like an allow clobber. If this already exists, I'm going to register it anyways. So now I have my repository registered. As you saw before, I already have some resources in there. So we'll just verify that we're able to connect to it with a find call, but I'll show you how to publish as well. Oh, I did repository. I meant to do name. There we go. Okay, cool. Got information back. We're connected. We're working. Of course, if this was a brand new repository, you would first want to publish. So let's go ahead and increment the version of this dummy test module that I have here. And then you're just going to publish PS resource as you otherwise would. I'm not going to be in the right directory for where I want to be. Cool, there we go. Cool. And again, I'm just going to provide the path in my repository. I don't need an API key in this instance. I don't need credentials because those are already being handled by my permissions at the Azure level. So I do need to have write permissions to this ACR instance, for example. Whoa, what happened to my file? Did I accidentally paste something in here?
There's an ORS copy on my one.
Oh, thank you. Well, that won't work. Any questions right now? Yeah.
Priority.
Yeah.
How does that work? You don't specify a repository, we'll just pick the highest priority, or
Yes. So repository works not on publish, but on find and install calls. So it orders the packages and it'll return, if for an install, the first one that's found. So default, when you're registering a repository, if I don't specify anything, it's going to default to a priority 50, which is what the PS gallery is default as well. If you have all repositories the same priority, it's going to go in alphabetical order. But yeah, that's just a way. Back in PowerShell Get, if you said install module, you didn't specify a repository, it's going to error out. So that just provides an ordering. Yeah. Yeah.
you just created that repository, right, with your bicep file?
Mm-hmm.
So how come it already had a module in it?
Oh, okay. So I actually didn't just create it right now. So with Bicep, you can redeploy your infrastructure. Even if it already exists, it will succeed or update it if there's a change there. So we could deploy a new, this is hanging, I think, just because of
I think it's conference Wi-Fi.
the conference Wi-Fi I'm having some issues with. So let's show that. I think that would be cool to see if it'll cancel out. Okay, let's just create a new terminal for ourselves. Okay, if we go to my Bicep file, is this the right one? Yes, okay. So let's say we want to instead make a new repository for next year. PS Summit 26 ACR. Okay. Okay, I think we should be good. Let me just actually. Sorry, I'm gonna kill this terminal so it doesn't cause us issues. Okay. Oh yeah, CD into the ACR. Remember to do that this time. Okay. Well, this is running. We can talk about something else.
Go ahead.
Any special considerations to do with like role-based access, or who can publish, who cannot publish? Is there a question there? Like, how does that work as far as, hey, my CI/CD can do it, but I can't do it?
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's a really,
Let me do it.
really good question. So one of the benefits of using ACR, I would say, is that you have all of the sort of built-in capabilities of Azure Identity. And so when you're connecting, you can set your ACR privileges, and you can set that at using Bicep, for example, to only support authentication to certain groups, certain individuals, or certain identity types, right? So you could just have it only do managed identity or whatever you would want it to be.
And then all of the Entra conditional access stuff works. So you can say something like, you can only authenticate from within my country. For user accounts, you could say your machine has to be the configuration has to comply with our corporate standards. All of that stuff just is one of the things we got for free.
But you're also saying you can also limit the access to the artifacts themselves. I'm not familiar with that as well. But it's the entire registry, you go from there.
You can with Docker. I don't remember if scope maps have been fully translated over to Entra right now.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I think an important thing too, right, is like write and read access and having those.
Oh yeah, you
separate.
can. I'm pretty sure you can. If you go into repositories.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it's here or in the scope map stuff. We'd have to wait till we publish something.
Yeah. Or repository. Oh yeah, scope maps. Anyway, something to look at.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So, anyways.
Well, but I want to take
Oh,
this
yeah, go for it.
opportunity. Can you hit Control Plus a couple times so those words get real big?
Yeah.
And it's just the stuff under services is all I'm thinking about here.
Yep.
So if we can kind of click through those, each module will become a repository. So we want to think repos to things that are being published. Webhooks, it's just like any other webhook. So you can say, when I publish, kick something off. So that could be an Azure function, that could be anything that you want to go call. So if you had a process where when somebody publishes a module, you want to do something like extract it, make sure it follows your compliance rules through something that's totally custom, that's how you would do it. Geo-replication, literally you just pick Azure regions and say, this is where I want this replicated to, so you have total control. That could be bringing it closer to your users, especially if you're an international organization. It could also mean that you've got, different Azure regions where you're putting things, and you just want to limit how much you're creating global network global network calls, and just bring it closer to your servers. That's fine. Under tasks, that's the specific set of tasks. It's sort of like webhooks, but they have a definition of tasks and what you can do there. It's in the docs. I don't spend too much time on that. Connected registries is the one where this isn't currently in preview. I think the existing docs start off by saying it's an IoT edge thing. They have pulled that back and moved it over to being a Kubernetes thing. And then we may need your help with this, but we're kind of urging them towards, it can also just be a server thing, so that you can literally just have a Docker. It's literally a Docker install. You can get a general purpose one today from the container world that's just called registry, and it's in Docker Hub. And they have a whole docs page on it. But the team that owns this, what we're urging them to do is today they only use what's called the scope maps and the Docker style of authentication for connected registries, but we've got it into their backlog. We're just trying to bump the priority to also support Entra authentication so that PSResourceGet can use it. Bicep also uses ACR as its mechanism for storing and sharing things, and Winget is adding support for ACR. So we're hoping to get a little bit of rolling thunder and figure out a way that this supply chain security problem can start getting solved. Again, this doesn't solve all the problems. It's just a step in the right direction. So.
Okay, cool. So back to this, right? Okay, new ACR instance, no packages. We'll try our publish operation one more time. Cool. So what that's, oh yeah, go for it.
Just a quick question. Do you plan on having the PowerShell gallery to be mirrored in an ACR so that you can manage everything through one ACR and not having to do both at the same time?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I would say my hope would be that folks see both MAR and PowerShell Gallery as places to discover packages, but not necessarily places where they're installing packages from in automation. So in that sense, I would expect like an organization to have an ACR instance, both where they're pulling in packages from MAR and packages from PowerShell Gallery. Now we'll show that there's some caching that you can do from MAR. I think the question would be, is there also going to be caching from PowerShell Gallery? And what's a little bit tricky there, it's not as straightforward as just adding it, is that the PowerShell Gallery is a NuGet v2 endpoint versus ACR is a container instance. So right now, there is no direct support. It would be you are installing a package and then publishing it to your ACR instance.
No, the idea is that Microsoft manages the copy of the PowerShell gallery. So then if you want to, we can just pull from your copy. So then it doesn't matter. If you publish to the gallery, it's also replicated to the equivalent of the gallery, but
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So were you going to say that?
I was going to say, no plans.
No plans. So I think
what we might do.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, I think that the problem that we're trying to solve with MAR, the number one problem that we were trying to solve with MAR is that spoofing problem, or having a place where we can have, there's already processes in place to have Microsoft verified modules in the sense that you can trust the publisher. I think that's been a security concern for us for a while. And so I think that was our top priority, I guess, with MAR. The idea of a mirrored ACR instance would be, or any sort of Docker or like container instance. I don't know, I could see a community project spinning up or something like that. But it's not to say we would never do it. I just don't think that's like the top priority with this change.
There's two problems things for us to think about as we do that. So right now there's no SLA on the gallery, right? It's just a community gallery. It's just here for sharing. There is an SLA on MAR, and there's a big engineering team that has an SLA behind ACR because it's a customer-facing service. So maybe at some point, like we just start shifting from the NuGet servers that host the gallery today over to ACR as the backbone of the gallery. But then, and I love how Steve Lee just goes, and then we'll just take on an engineering project and do like some sort of adapter that translates between NuGet calls and that. I'm like, dude, that's like a year's worth of work, but sure, like maybe, right? But maybe ACR can do both. Maybe we do a mirror. And then one of the things, just to plant the seed and let you think about it for a little bit, and then we'll ask the question again later, is what I said earlier, like, oh, well, Microsoft's got one, and Amazon's got one, and Google's got one, and VMware's got one. Well, that's really cool, but we should make that super discoverable. If you're if you're not an expert and you're thinking about, oh, I want to do register-PS resource repository, how do I discover those? But then what if Gail's company wants to have their own. Like, does that go in the same list? Does it just become like a Git repo that accepts PRs and then that somehow gets plumbed in? And I don't know what the right answer is. It might take us a year to figure that out or longer, but yes, sir.
The point is, when you do that, and this is great, and for vendors, it's great, so that they can have their own, and then the customer, like the end customer, will have their setup, which will pull from those different repositories. So they will say, well,
Yes.
I say Microsoft is trusted, I'll add it to my list. But not on the end client, not in PSResourceGet on the machine, the registry with the caching. And then, And then the problem is, you don't, then we need, as a customer, we need to look at everything, container registry, plus the PowerShell gallery, which we can't do at the end.
You got it. Yep.
Only
The funnel.
PSResourceGet can do it.
If you click on cache, there is a workaround here that I wanted to share. So if you click create rule, go.
I have the workaround here, right? Is that what you're looking for?
You sure do. You're smarter
Okay.
than me. The idea whenever you do new is you've got source and it's different types of artifact registries. So
I could go back to that.
they're all just artifact registries. It doesn't, I don't
Oh,
think,
what
accept
I mean.
NuGet. But it accepts wildcards. So everything that's been published as a PowerShell module into MAR starts with PSResource. That way you can say, I don't want to open caching to the entire Microsoft artifact registry. I only want the PowerShell things. And then you can have as many of these cache rules as you want. And the thing to remember is whenever you do, and we'll put this in the docs, when you do a register-PS resource repository, your URL needs that string, the PS resource string after the /, so that the same thing happens whenever you type find. That way you don't have to say find PS resource /az.resources. You can just say az.resources and it'll search for it. So we'll document that as a work. It's a workaround, which at first I thought was a bug, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, actually, that's really handy. That's not a bug. It's just something we need to document. It just worked out.
Does that mean you'll be able to be even more specific and say, I only want to replicate az.accounts or
Yep, exactly.
az.accounts this version?
I don't know if you can be version.
Yeah,
Until you're ready to approve the next version.
Well, actually, this works out great because this is your mirroring demo.
Oh, yeah.
There's two scenarios, which has also been something we just fairly recently kind of thought about and discovered. Caching versus mirroring. So in a caching scenario, you're just using it like a proxy, except for it's storing it locally after the first time that you've installed it. So there in your client, if you specify a version or you specify a name, it's just proxying cache, same kind of concept. But what if there's a scenario where for any reason your ACR instance can't talk to the other thing and you want to mirror it? And that could be because you want to filter what content is there. So that's something else that Sydney's been playing around with.
I just was playing around with like a snippet to install all of the AZ modules because there is like, it is a bit nested. But no, I mean, it's a good example because I think it's the most complex. Like, so the simple example, right, with AZ accounts, you just install it and then publish it, right? Like you would need the path. It wouldn't just the name, but you get the idea, right? So that's the case if you want to stay at a specific version, but also, oh, that was almost right. We'll take that and then just go like that. So another case, right, would be that I'm going to install the AZ modules and then copy them and publish them to my PowerShell Summit repo, ACR instance.
You want to use this chance to talk about the or as copy?
Yeah. So
command
what?
line,
So
or
okay.
just the or as command line in general?
Yeah. So ORAS has a bit of a more handy thing that would maybe be cool to have in PSResourceGet if you could specify like target repository or like copy a module from this repository to that repository. That'd be really cool if we have. We don't have that today, but ORAS does. So here is just like how I, for example, would copy the AZ Security Insights module in a one-liner from MCR to my ACR instance. So it's just ORAS copy MCR location and then ACR location. So that's pretty handy, and that's going to be used. That could be used with caching as well.
Probably more of a mirror scenario, but yeah, You get the idea. You could use ORAS to pre-populate your cache.
Sure.
For sure. And ORAS is installable from probably Brew, but definitely
that's how I
I've checked it
installed
from WinGet. So you can do a WinGet install ORAS.
Brew install ORAS is what I did.
It doesn't support Entra-based authentication, so that's the scenario we figured out. You'll want to enable, they call it the admin accounts.
For ORAS,
Yeah,
for ORAS, what I used was the AZ CLI. If you use AZ CLI,
awesome,
that works as well.
awesome.
Yeah, so AZ CLI or AZ login. One thing I'll also call out is you might have noticed this like PS resource here. One thing that might be handy to know if you're looking at MAR is that all PowerShell resources are prefixed with PS resource. So if I want the list of all PS resources that are available today in MAR, I just searched PS resource and 10 pages of them came up. I will caveat today, the only team that we have fully onboarded onto MAR is the Azure PowerShell team. That was kind of our pilot scenario. And now we're working with other Microsoft teams to onboard as well. But if you have sort of priorities of modules that you would like to see in MAR, that's also helpful for us to know. This has been extremely chaotic, I feel, as a presentation.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. So,
but
so
was there
what,
any questions at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you handle, so currently in PS resources, you can have cross-repository dependencies. So in the world of each vendor having their own ACR, how would you handle where one vendor requires a module of another vendor?
Yeah. So you can, in like on the installation step, you could like, so I guess workaround today. When you're installing, you can skip dependencies. So you could manage dependencies on your own. Not ideal, but that would be the workaround today. I think it's an interesting idea, kind of like what we were talking about yesterday, or about having potentially another section in private data, or like expanding the way you can specify a required module to allow for that. It is a little bit tricky though, potentially from like a security perspective or like authentication. So I think there would be a lot to figure out there, but I would say it's an interesting idea. We don't have a solution.
You kind of have to answer that. Like, well, if your customers depend on your AZ modules, but our customers depend on AWS modules, there's a ton of modules in the world with those kinds of dependencies on the big vendors.
Yeah.
They have to work.
Yeah.
By default. I think you have to solve that.
very good point.
Yep.
Yeah, the question, the statement, which was 100% right, is there are many organizationally authored modules and community modules that depend upon modules from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, etc. So the dependency resolution across those really has to get figured out. There's no that's not negotiable. It has to happen.
So my question is about even, gallery where it is currently stated community driven and that kind of thing. We're moving, the approved, verified modules into MAR. Well, are we gonna pull those kind of modules from gallery too? They're not available there anymore. You have to go to MAR for it?
There'll be both.
They'll be both. Yeah.
No
so
choice.
there's, if you think about it, there's a lot of
I know there is, and it's like, well,
Windows machines out there that won't natively support container registry. So yeah, definitely gallery's not going anywhere.
The crux of that is as we go convince all the teams, hey, start publishing here, then we have to make sure that they remember that. There's no choice.
you're gonna just publish the vote.
Yep.
and Go from there.
Yep.
Yep.
And if you want to truly have a verified, hey, this is your source.
Yep.
That you can get it still there. But
Nailed it.
It's not trusted.
You got it exactly.
Yeah, I think
Also, I saw you're calling out something intrinsically here, which is special about this session. One of the things we hear from the community all the time, and we're not very good at communicating when we're doing it, is, hey, just tell us what you're thinking. Tell us where you're headed, right? It doesn't have to be a perfectly baked story. It's okay if you tell us right in the middle of it. Just kind of give us an idea where you're going. That's what we're doing here. So as you're seeing, like, oh, they don't have all the answers. It's exactly right. And that's why we wanted to bring it to Summit.
yeah. So
because
please
we get
keep asking
feedback
the
here.
questions so that we can sort those things out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I've got a two-part.
Yeah.
You've got a GPO, an ADMX that's coming out.
Oh, let me show you it. It's available today.
Will it be able to disable PS Gallery in Windows PowerShell? I presume it can do that in PowerShell.
That's such a good question. Yeah. So it will. only work in PSResourceGet, so you would need to also disable PowerShell Get. Yeah.
What does the process look like for copying a public, a PS gallery module into an ACR?
Yeah. So
That would basically be a save PS resource, publish PS resource.
yeah,
Long story
exactly.
short.
Yeah. But PS Resource Register policy, if I enable it, I can provide a hash table of allow lists. So you provide the table of endpoints that you're going to allow, and then all other repositories will be disabled. If you enable the policy but provide nothing in your allow list, it will fully disable PSResourceGet. So
Can you consider having a non-destructive option where publish these to clients, but don't necessarily remove existing? You know, we have a very decentralized environment.
yeah,
We don't necessarily want to
we have
stop.
we have talked about that.
Well, I don't think group policy has a way to handle only being additive. I think that's what we figured out.
There are some.
Some? Okay.
Some,
You could check it and then register the repositories. That is something we talked about. We just didn't do, but
Maybe
you
we
know,
need to,
feel free to have a feature request. I mean, not feature
Yeah,
request,
an issue.
PR too as well, because it's, if you're familiar with writing group policy, that's the piece that we would need. But also a feature request.
it could potentially be the first time anybody's PR'd to an ADMX file, but let's try it.
Okay, well, I know, oh yeah, go for it.
But if you are as CLI behind the scenes or the SDKs for similar functionality, they expose username and password capabilities that I'm guessing most vendors would use for a private repository. Like ORAS user blah password blah or run command do this action. Maybe we're thinking about how you could integrate that with PSResourceGet as well, because then a copy command or an automated logon to a private repository would be very easy for customers to consume.
If we're talking about are you talking about just the authentication into the repository?
So correct me if I'm wrong, and this will catch it on video too, so we'll go through it later and write it down. There are a bunch of vendors who put up a paywall and say you have to buy a support agreement before you get our module. So I think the question was, how am I going to get those into my ACR? And that's the problem to solve. Yeah.
Private company with their own private ACR would have the same thing every user.
Yep.
We need to auth to get to private registries.
Yeah, so I think, well, I could be misunderstanding the question, but there's multiple ways to authenticate in PSResourceGet. There's the Entra-based Azure ID identity that we showed today. You can also provide a credential at install time at each call. You can provide a credential object, or you can use secret management and save your credential, a username and password object at registration time, and have that be used at each call. So those would be the three main ways you can authenticate today. Yeah.
Good question. Thank you. Well, for any other conversation, we can just take it out in the hallway, and I'll keep trying to hydrate my throat. And
Yeah. Thanks
Thank
for
you very
bearing
much for
with
the
us
feedback.
today.
It's really good, very thoughtful.